hello again. Welcome back to the second session of Digital Matters today, produced with our friends at Facebook. Earlier, we looked at change makers, and Trang, Jay, and Alina gave some amazingly empowering stories, and you can still catch up with those on the branded Facebook page. And up next, we continue the dialogue. We have two more incredible women lined up to talk about blasting stereotypes. And at the helm is Facebook's very own Anna Rodriguez-Dela Cruz, who joins me now. Anna, welcome to Digital Matters. I believe you're in Manila today. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Facebook.
Hi, Jasper. Really excited to be hosting this session this afternoon. So just a little bit about me before I introduce our esteemed panel today. I handle strategic partnerships for entertainment at Facebook Philippines, along with Elena, who hosted this morning's session. So throughout my career, I've really had a chance to meet a whole lot of accomplished, influential, wonderful, distinguished people in the media industry. And the best thing about that is I've had the privilege of hearing and telling their stories of transformation and of personal accomplishment. And I think that's the privilege that I want to share with everybody in our session today.
That's fantastic. Now, we are sharing with a lot of people, and please, those lots of people who are watching, whether you're watching on Facebook or on LinkedIn or wherever you're watching this, please do get your questions in. So we've got these two amazing speakers with Anna today. So get your questions in. But Anna, what is in store for the rest of the session?
So, okay, I'm going to start with a quote by author Alice Walker. So she wrote that the most common way people give up their power is by thinking that they don't have any. But today we will meet two women who wrote their own story, blasted stereotypes, and created an impact for themselves and the world around them. So I am not going to waste time talking about the session, and we're going to go right into it. And yeah, just as a reminder, again, like we're going to go into a Q&A session right after we talk to our panelists. And so keep the questions coming. First up, we have the amazing Xyza Bacani. So the first time I heard about Xyza, I was really like super impressed. She's a Filipina author and photographer who uses her work to raise awareness about underreported stories. Having worked as a second-generation domestic worker in Hong Kong for almost a decade, she is particularly interested in the intersection between labor, migration, and human rights. She is one of the Magnum Foundation's Photography and Social Justice Fellows in 2015, has exhibited worldwide, and won awards in photography. She is also the recipient of a resolution by the Philippine House of Representatives in her honor. Xyza is awarded the Outstanding Women of the Nation's Service in the field of humanities. She is also one of Asia 21's Young Leaders, class of 2018. The WMA Commission also, she's also a grantee of the WMA Commission in 2017, a Pulitzer Center, and an Open Society Moving Walls 2017 grantee, among many, many other accomplishments and accolades. All this, and she's only just in her early 30s. Hello, Xyza, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hello, Anna, and hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Wow, like that's like a very interesting resume you've got there. And it's just the tipping point, the starting point of an extremely interesting journey. So working as a second-generation domestic worker in Hong Kong to the multi-awarded photographer, speaker, and author that you are now. Could you please tell us a little bit of that transformation? How did you shift from being a domestic worker to a photographer, and who were the allies that empowered you to make that shift?
So I have a very typical OFW family story. So my mom left, and then I was a left behind child. I'm the eldest, and then suddenly I need to leave as well and to help the family. But and then I made the transformation in 2014 when I got discovered on Facebook. Actually, that's
cool.
So I was just posting my images on Facebook, and then this amazing and very someone opened the door for me, Rick Rocamora, a photojournalist in San Francisco. So he sent my story on New York Times, and they were interested, and then it started from there. The allies, I do think that one of my biggest allies are my parents, because we're never rich. We're still poor. Migration has shaped our lives for the longest time, but they taught me from the young age that I'm not my circumstances. Especially my father. He's very he always reminds me to that whatever job I do, whatever I do for a living, it doesn't matter, because it's how I treat other people that will matter. So my values in life are very strong since I was a child, because of my father and my mom. And then I have met so many gracious people. So whatever sucks, if I call it a success, or whatever I am today, is not just me. It's a group of people who opened their doors, who accepted me in their lives and helped me. I'm a product of the goodness of other people.
Wow. That's really amazing. I really like what you said about I am not my circumstance. Like, I'm not defined by my circumstance. But
Yes.
that sometimes circumstances come with like a lot of stigma.
Oh, yeah.
And being Filipino myself, like, I know there's a lot of stigma attached to a lot of the adjectives that maybe have been attached to you in those days. Now, being a Filipina working as a domestic worker in Hong Kong is almost, as you mentioned, stereotypical
Mm.
for some of our families and for Filipino women in particular. Did this stigma prove to be a challenge, or do you think that it even figured at all in your story? And if it did, what is the story that you told yourself that allowed you to break through this stereotype?
Well, people tend to define people in a way that they can understand you in a very, they simplify things. So when I was working as a domestic worker, but I was taking photos, I already experienced a lot of stigma that when they see me or they meet me, oh, you're a photographer, amazing, blah, blah, blah. And then if I mention that I'm a domestic worker as myself, um, I noticed the shift of mood, or the way they they interact with me. I really noticed that, as if my job, my day job as a domestic worker, there's something wrong about it, or something like that. And then when I became a full-time artist myself, there's still a lot of stereotype. It's so easy for people to just lump me in this, oh, domestic worker photographer, because clickbait, easier to understand. This is a checklist. Oh, she's a domestic worker. But it's so difficult for them to understand that being a domestic worker, it's just a job. I'm more than that. And a lot of migrant workers are more than what they do for a living. I call them champions. Yeah.
But did that
Oh.
ever like affect the way you also see yourself? Or like you've always had this confidence, like growing up, that you were gonna do what you want to do?
Oh no, because as I mentioned, I get annoyed. I'm human, but and I have this very expressive face. So when I get annoyed, people can really see it, that they've said something offensive and they start apologizing, whatever. But at first, it was like I try not to show that people have offended me, because I was like, okay, let's not offend people as well. But then I realized that it's my rights to actually defend myself. So I started speaking out more and telling people that, hey, what you're doing is putting me in a box. You're actually being not an ally at this moment. So that's what it doesn't really affect me, inside, because I've grown up in a family where they encourage us to be more confident about who we are as people.
Okay. So I think it's probably because, would you say it was probably because of this background of yours that drove
Mm.
you to actually choose this specific particular niche in your photography where you're specializing in using your photos to tell the stories of underrepresented sectors of society?
Oh yeah, because I lived the experience. It's so different when you live the experience, and I'm an insider to these stories. So instead of just sympathizing with them, I actually empathize because I went through that myself. So I think it shows in the photos when I everyone wants dignity, right? We want to be dignified when we are seen in public, and so my experiences comes is really helpful when I'm taking photographs of underreported stories, because I put myself in their shoes. I know what's the feeling, or how it feels to be in their shoes.
And how has this path actually transformed your life in concrete terms?
Well, I look better. I'm just kidding. I
You
can
look
finally
great.
buy skincare. No, it impacted my life in so many ways. It made me a better person. I don't have a very short temper anymore. When you're young and you tend to get angry at a lot of things because injustice and all. But then I realized that meeting people, they gave me so much more than I gave anything to them. They taught me how the real world works. So it made me a better person. It made me a better photographer. Yeah.
And do you think, like, some people might not understand like how photos can actually impact or move change? So what impact do you feel your photos bring in enacting real change in the lives of these underrepresented people? And can you give us examples of that? And what like categories or sectors do you usually take photos of?
Well, for example, in the migrant, in general, I think the biggest impact is with the people that I collaborated with, the people that I photograph, because they always tell me that it feels nice to be seen and heard. Because, the people that I photograph are, you know, I really hate when people say, oh, I'm giving voice to the voiceless, because that's not true. Because these people have their own voices, but we just don't listen. You know what I mean? We don't listen at their voices and we try to give them voice, which is like really wrong. And in my opinion, it's really wrong. What I do is just amplify their voice. What I do is just give a microphone, like, okay, tell us your story. And that experience for them to be able to tell their stories, to share their stories through photos and words, it makes a big impact to their life, because finally someone is listening.
Yeah, everybody wants to be seen.
Yeah, and someone is seeing them without judgment. That is such a big deal. And when it comes to like organizations, I have been really active with different organizations that I really support, like Betun House in Hong Kong. I also been a have I spoke to a lot of like foreign I don't know if I could say that, but they invited me to talk about migration, like for example, Department of Foreign Affairs, not the Philippines but other countries, so that they can understand how they can make rules or they can make regulations that will affect migrant workers. I think that's what I do on the background. Sometimes I become the expert on migration, so that they know what to do in a very humane way. Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you said like just people want to be seen, and through
Mhm.
your craft, you've been seen,
Mhm.
and in such a big way. You've been recognized by some of the most prestigious institutions and became part of some of the most enviable lists in Asia and around the world. I would say like BBC's 100 Women of the World 2015,
Oh yeah.
30 under 30 women photographers 2016, Forbes 30 under 30 Asia 2016. I mean, there are all these accolades, right?
Uh-huh.
I guess it's interesting to find out, like, what do these accolades mean to you, and how have they changed you as a person?
Doesn't really mean anything. No, it means a lot because it makes my parents proud. And I think if there's one thing that I can give my parents whenever I receive an award, it makes them smile and feel proud that they have done something really good with one of their kids. So that's the biggest thing when I receive an award. But for me, I don't really put it in my head because I always feel like there's so much things that needs to be done, and these awards are, it's something that I it's my gift to my parents. That's it, for me. But personally, I celebrate it, but the next day I'm like, okay, what do we need to do to change this? What do we need to do that? Yeah.
So when you said that they don't really mean much, that means that you don't define your success by
No.
these awards. So how do you define success? What's the success look like for Xyza?
I think I will right now, because I change my mind a lot. But if there's something that really sticks with me, I can say that I am a successful documentary photographer when the situation of migrant workers are finally changed, or are better than before. Because I have been documenting migration for 5 years, and my biggest frustration actually is nothing is changing for migrant workers. And for me to define success with as a documentary photographer, if my work can actually change something in the system, then that is success for me, for the betterment of migrant workers. Yeah.
Wow. So very much like a woman for others. And that's very impressive. So thank you, Xyza, for sharing such an inspiring life journey with us. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of questions from our viewers. And so before we let her go, just want to send out a reminder to everybody who's watching that please do ask your questions, especially since we've got like this wonderful lady with us right now. And I invite you in the meantime to relax, Xyza, as we chat with someone who is definitely no stranger to me, and no stranger to the rest of the Philippines. Let's welcome our next speaker, who I have had the pleasure of working with in the past. She's a multi-awarded veteran tri-media journalist and the epitome of the modern-day power woman. She has worked as a newspaper columnist, as a radio sociology political commentator, as chief news correspondent. She was a senior news anchor for the biggest broadcast network in the Philippines, ABS-CBN, Channel 2, studying as the primetime newscast anchor and as a TV news magazine show host. She has since departed from frontline news presenting because of her marriage to politician Manuel Mar Roxas, who had served in the cabinet as congressman and then senator and ran for president in 2016. She joins us today to tell us about how her new life has offered her new opportunities, like being a mother to her twins, Pepe and Pilar. Those are the cutest kids ever. Please welcome Korina Sanchez-Roxas. Hi, Korina.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you.
I know.
You only get to text and to email. I haven't
I
seen you
know.
the longest time.
I haven't, but you still look great. I stalk your Facebook and your kids. Like I see your feeds so much, and they're just very lovable. And I'd love to get to talk about them like later on in this talk. But let's start with for the people who aren't Filipino, because I think this is for the benefit of them rather than the Filipinos. You are one of the most well-respected, most awarded news and current affairs personalities of all time in this country.
Wow.
I think a lot of people would agree with that. So not only are you known to be a hard-hitting journalist, but really we've worked together telling stories of human interest. And you've become a very influential public figure. So it's not something really stereotypical of women in the Philippines, especially, many years back when we were still a lot more conservative. Is this something that you've always aspired to be?
Well, I'm not really sure if anybody can really plot their trajectory as they start off when they're 21 years old. I only knew that I love performance. I thought I was going to be an actress, but then I don't like pretending. I loved writing, so I thought that the middle ground would be journalism and broadcast journalism because, well, you have to appear on television, and that's all it was in the beginning for a young girl who loved to write and to appear on television with makeup. That was when I was 21. But then as you go on, I think, I'm not sure if I only speak for myself, but for other women who tried it out and just kept trying to break the glass ceilings at every step of the way, you discover these glass ceilings that you never even thought were there. And then you just keep going through doors that were half open, barging yourself in, doing what you can. And then more doors open, more glass ceilings shatter, and one thing just leads to another, you know? I think the trick really is to just keep on trying your best and allowing logic to dictate along with your passions coming from your heart. It really is a marriage between the brain and the heart. And you don't really need to emulate anyone. I think if it is within you to just do the best you can in everything you do, whether it's cooking, sweeping the floor, taking photographs, or being a reporter, the principle is all the same. You just do your best.
Okay, so you talked about like breaking glass ceilings and just keeping on going. And your career has really had, it's a very colorful one, and there has been a lot of highs and lows. Could you share with us a few of those pivotal moments where you feel have actually contributed to, well, I'll put it in quotes, like your success, the way you define it?
Well, I think I came at it. Well, success is relative. Thank you for thinking that I am. I think I would call myself successful in just trying my best in everything, given whatever circumstance, including when I started. And the circumstance then was that we were under martial rule, under the Marcos dictatorship in 80-something. I want to be dated. So I'm not saying any year. I'm not mentioning any year. But during the Marcos years, during the end of that term, I was the weather girl, and I was the editorial assistant in the government-owned station. So that was a time when things were censored and news facts were tweaked. It was selective. Good thing about the weather is that you can't censor the weather, right? I mean, it's either it's going to rain or it's going to be sunshine. So, and then I morphed into being a reporter. But soon after that was the EDSA revolution. And I have to say, to have been born as a young journalist at that time was absolutely magical. I think it was really single-handedly, you might call, the golden years of journalism in that part of the world, here in the Philippines, where journalism reborn under a new free administration after 20 years of being censored and losing that freedom of speech and expression. It was like being a demigod of sorts. And I find out later on that in other third world countries where they were also under martial rule, when freedom was restored, it was the same thing. It's apparently a universal phenomenon that journalists are just put on a pedestal, and then you are given the power, as it was the privilege, to push and pull, to test the limits of those newfound powers. Making mistakes, you kind of overdo it or underdo it as a journalist. And again, so now freedom is redefined, restored and redefined in more modern times. So I'm very blessed to have been part of that transition. And I think that was the kind of journalism that was fearless, that was newly restored, that was almost boundless, that still kind of is the foundation of me and my batch to this day. And it has been 35 years, 40 years since then. I started when I was 2 years old, by the way. I was a child reporter. It's kind of different. I think I don't speak for everyone, and I don't speak of anyone in particular, but there is a difference between the journalists of then and now, and the guys in between. On my part, and that now that I'm older, you kind of define success differently given circumstances, and basing it on how you were awakened as a journalist 40 years ago.
Okay. Wow. You dated yourself.
I know. The truth comes out nonetheless.
Yes, as we know in journalism. In any case, so we're nowadays it's all about also like diversity and inclusion, and there's a whole lot of things going on about accepting segments in society, and women has always been one of those. Has being a woman in the workplace actually affected your career in any way? Do you find that there has been expectations and preconceived notions about women in the media, and has this impacted you?
Well, there are preconceived notions of women, period, in whatever field, even in the home, even in the family. The brothers get the lion's share of whatever rather than the sisters. Not for everyone, but it's still very, very prevalent in society. And the family is just a microcosm of society. And in the Philippines, this has been a struggle, whether or not we admit it. It still is. Of course, I received my share of that. As a young reporter, you think it might be the norm. Something inside tells you it's wrong. But then during those days, it was like, okay, I guess it's the norm, right? And you just have to put up. I'm not a very big fan of victimization. I really believe in fighting your way through it, because all of us have that power. I don't fault women who feel disempowered. Maybe I have the great fortune of being born this way. I had a very strong mother figure, for one thing. She never taught me anything. I just saw it for myself by example. So there were attempts at sexual harassment. There were also attempts at discrimination, like a male reporter being sent off to war coverages rather than women, or climbing a mountain because an airplane crashed into Baguio. And I remember one time when I wanted to do that story, my boss just said, it's a guy's story. And I remember just stomping my foot and throwing a tantrum. And that was not very corporate then. So you kind of tend to shut up. But yeah, I've had that share. But ever since, so many things, like Cory Aquino being the first woman president, and many other legislators coming into power, household help who have transformed into leaders of their provinces. So many stories of women who just struggle to be themselves and to show that they can make that equal contribution. Things have pretty much changed, I would say. Having said that, the proportion of benefits to men is still much larger than women. I would think so. For one thing, I believe that that the men were paid more. The men were paid more. I discovered this much later on. Maybe I just didn't negotiate well enough. I don't know if that's my fault, or this guy had a better manager to negotiate. But the disparity was just too glaring. So yeah, it's inescapable. Yes, I've had my share of that. It existed then, and it exists today.
Yeah, but we can see you've broken through those glass ceilings. But then your life changed, like, quite significantly. And this is where the transformation, I think, that we want to really talk about comes in. So you got married to Mar. And how was that like? How was that like having to take a step back? If that's what if that is what had happened, because that's also I think that's a preconceived notion that people may have, that you had taken a step back from your own career or your own aspirations to become a wife, a supportive wife. Mm-hmm. And did this change anything about like how you defined yourself?
Sure. Well, once a journalist, they say always a journalist, and that will never change in me. I mean, sifting through facts and leaning towards seeking the truth and whatnot. But I also don't believe in a woman, or anyone for that matter, being boxed into one facet or being one dimensional. I think my journalism is just one facet of me. I'm a big lover of life. I think life is very short, and there's just so much out there to discover and to be part of. When I met Mar, I was already, well, maybe 20 years into the business. I'm also a believer that once you've been doing the same thing for 20 years, you're kind of ready to move on or discover other facets of your life. And I was always also one to look the monster in the eye. Again, I earlier said that I don't believe in feeling like a victim. When I decided to marry a politician, I knew that I would have to take a step back. And a decision had to be made. I made that decision wholeheartedly. I have no regrets. Of course, I miss frontline news a lot. I feel I have yet to make a big contribution. But hey, these days everybody's a journalist, Anna. With Facebook, I mean, you can report your heart out. Take the photographs that you want. Take the video that you want, and state your narration the way you want. And so I get to scratch that itch whenever I want to. But there is also the businesswoman in me. There is also the fashionista in me. Don't hate me for that. I mean, come on. There's a mother in me that I latently discovered, and I love to travel. And so, yes, when I embrace the change, there's just so much that we've been blessed with to embrace. So I think that change is not a bad thing. Even if you might think it is, there's always something to look at the glass half full with. And I'm the kind that looks at a glass half full.
Yeah.
So yeah, there have been changes. There have been happy changes. I would never imagine myself wearing a bathing suit and posting the photo on Facebook or Instagram. But now I get to do that. I don't have to be too conservative because I'm not a frontline news anchor anymore. And yeah, so it's been a happy transition.
And you're also still doing your magazine show, and just very recently actually found several venues, and it's now airing in multiple platforms. So those stories are allow you actually tell stories of other people. And how does that factor into sort of that hard-hitting journalist that you were really more known for in the beginning?
Right. Well, there was a defining moment when, maybe after traveling with a scholarship on journalism and looking at everything from all angles, I tended to be a little more mellow. During those days of 1986, to say about 10 years later, it was the norm to be hard hitting because we were overcompensating for what we lost for 23 years, I think.
Yeah.
And being with all those hormones as a 20-something-year-old and being given a microphone, you tend to kind of overdo it. But as long as you stayed within the bounds of the law, then you weren't really that much in trouble. So that much I was able to rein myself in with. But since then, I kind of mellowed, and it did not really have to take stepping back or getting married to mellow. The magazine show allows me to do advocacy, which is quite big with me these days. I like to, just like Xyza, tell the stories that are untold, to herald the unsung heroes, because there really is such big news in small lives. And in the Philippines, with 7,000 something islands, so many provinces, so many subcultures, the stories just don't run out. And not too many people go for those stories. Everybody wants to have the get and the exclusive on the big stories, but there really is so much to learn from and so much wealth that feeds the soul in the smaller stories that are real in our everyday lives. So yes, I love doing the magazine show. Even when ABS-CBN went off the air, I funded it myself. I funded the production myself, and I put it on Facebook. So we still had a show going on until I was picked up by TV5.
Okay. And I think that maybe your biggest treasures now actually came from that decision to sort of be more mellow, because it you just made a decision to become a mother, which I know you've always really wanted that, to have that experience. And you had twins now by surrogacy fairly later on in life, compared to most women. And what drove you to that decision? Because I think that's a happy story that we want to hear.
Well, it wasn't an impromptu decision. It was a decision I made when I froze my embryos, say about 25 years ago. In high school and college, I was the one most likely to have the most number of kids because I love children. So the decision to be a mother was very, very much earlier on, even before I got married to Mar. In fact, that was one of the lines I threw at him when we were in the courting stage, and I said, "Could you be the donor to my embryo?" And we laughed about it, and little did we know that would lead to reality. So I had my embryos with Mar frozen very early on. And it's just that he kept running for public office and kept getting all these jobs in government. So I never really found the right time to implant the embryos and be a mother earlier. That's the one thing I regret. I wish that I had done it earlier so I have more time with my children as they grow older. But again, to just have said, let's just do it and let's not have one, but two kids at the same time. There was an overwhelming feeling. There was some fear and some worry, concern. But elder mothers were quick to tell me, Korina, as soon as they show up, all those fears disappear. And that's exactly what happened. I don't think children define being a woman. You should be complete in yourself, apart from your children. I totally respect the decision of other women who don't want to have children. But really, the joy that these two new, small, little human beings give to me is just priceless and indescribable. So I only wish that I am going to be rearing better human beings than I am. And maybe whatever I leave off that I don't finish, they get to continue and complete for me.
And we thank you for sharing that joy with us through your Facebook feed. Like, those kids are really, really joyful and really give me myself. Like, I have not been blessed with kids. So I watch your videos, and
I know I get so pressured because people say, you haven't posted anything about your kids today. And it's like they follow me for my kids and not for me.
I follow the kids. That's true. I love it when you posted that video of them calling you by your first name.
I know.
It was like, I love you, Korina.
I know.
So, how would you describe personal fulfillment in this role as a mother vis-a-vis your personal fulfillment in your role as a high-powered journalist in your earlier years, or your first half?
Well, I think the good thing about getting married in your 40s and having kids in your 50s is that you have a pretty good idea who you are and what you want out of this very short life. And it was very clear to me, and I declared it so to my husband and to everyone around us, that I am going to be defining this motherhood. And this motherhood is not going to be by your standards, not even my husband's. I'm going to be mothering these kids the way my intuition tells me, the way my learnings tell me. I'll do my best. I won't be perfect, but I don't want you judging me every step of the way. I think they got scared. They were terrorized by my monologue. So nobody dares give me a comment these days. I also declared, Anna, very early on, that I am going to be a working mom, as my mother was. I can try to be better than my mom was. She was fantastic, but there was always room for improvement. And yeah, I'd like my daughter to grow up to know that she has a choice, and that she can't be shackled by fear, by boxes, by people's definitions. But then, of course, your conscience and your heart and your faith have to be guiding you through all of that. And one day, I might just bow out completely because I feel and I measure that I have to. And until that happens, I'm going to be a juggler. I'll be balancing it. And I want my daughter, even my son, Pepe, to watch me do that. So it's not a formula for everyone, but that's mine. So
Well, thank you for sharing with us your formula, Korina. And really, thank you for sharing with us this journey of yours and this beautiful transformation and how you didn't really let anything get in the way of you breaking through glass ceilings and, getting what you want out of life,
thank
especially that of being a mother. Um,
exactly.
yeah. So
The
time
ninth
really,
wonder of the world, having twins at past 50. Anna, it's not too late.
I know. It's so inspiring, really. And what's age, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Aching muscles is your number one enemy. But aside from that, it's all in the mind.
I am sure I'm going to take that and think about it. So time really does fly when you spend time in the company of people with such amazing stories to tell. So we'd like to bring Xyza back. And hi, Xyza.
Hello.
Um, so I want to ask this of both of you. Um, so it's obvious from your stories that you two are women who are not the kind who would rest on your laurels. Doesn't seem like something that either one of you would do. So, with the world just beginning to get back on its feet, what's next for you guys? So, I'd start with Siza. Like, what has COVID been like for you, and what is next for you now that the world is starting to open up?
Mm, I just want to say I really enjoyed Karina's talk. You like really smile and all of that. So COVID is terrifying. I lost friends, but then as a documentary photographer, I was really busy because, as Karina has mentioned, there's a lot of stories in rural, outside Manila. So I've been like reporting a lot of stories from the province, which is amazing because people are like interested in a provincial story, a rural story, and being published internationally. What's next for me is I'm gonna go back to school. Finally, after a year of deferring, I'm gonna go to NYU to take my master's in arts politics. It's a big deal for me because I never had undergrad. So it's like, let's go straight to masters.
Wow, wow, that's
That was
amazing.
it was fun. It was such like a confidence builder. But the reason why I'm doing it because I want to be able to express myself better, and I think it will be really helpful if I, I want to think better. And I do think that we need more critical thinking in the world today. And I want to learn how to encourage the younger generations that critical thinking is important, especially in our country. So that's why I'm going back to school. Yeah.
Wow, that's super amazing, inspiring. Karina, same question. So, like, how have you been throughout this whole COVID situation, and what are your plans for the future?
It's kind of surreal, as Siza said. I'm a big fan of what Siza has been doing, by the way. So, what I do to be 30 something again. Wow. And the world at your feet. Go for it, Siza. Well, okay. It was surreal in that in the sense that, gosh, we actually lived this long to see this happen in our lifetime. And you get to wonder about many, many things. I never cowered and stayed indoors, by the way. Soon after, maybe the first month, I was out there already. I didn't want the virus to beat me. I was very, very careful. I never got COVID, knock on wood. Thank you, Lord. Um, but then it also told me many things, which is in at the cusp of normalization and the vaccinations going on worldwide. I wonder if things are going to be different when we're all out there again. After being locked in and beaten, sort of, by a bug, the animals were free. They were COVID free. So what is it about human beings that we were chosen to be victimized by nature? Um, and I think the answer to that is within ourselves about how we can emerge as better human beings after this. I know it's a big statement to make, but in our own smaller lives by ourselves, I think we have to be asking ourselves that. As journalists, are we really, we should be doing everything better. Um, Animal cruelty has to stop, for example. I mean, the animals were not targeted by nature, it's the human being. So I just feel that in whatever we do, it has just got to be better, Anna. Whether it's to be a better mother or a better house help or a better business person. Okay, so anyway, to be less esoteric and less abstract, um, I intend to be a more active mother in the outdoors. My children are earth children. We're always looking for some mountain or some uninfected location to be in the outdoors. They love the rivers. They love being in the sea and having their feet bare on the soil. So I'll be more outdoorsy with my kids. Uh, Tell the stories more aggressively through my magazine show, and still ponder the question: how do we get people to be better human beings altogether? I really don't know what the answer to that is. I'm hoping for the best for humankind.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you're right. It's sort of like a big ask, but something that all of us should be looking at. And I think that's the reason why we have sessions like this, so that, we can tell like our little stories, and hopefully, it avalanches and we start touching like one person after another, and maybe we can make a bigger impact. And so with that, like, thank you so much, girls. Like, it was a really fun session. Like, I really learned a lot and I genuinely enjoyed listening to both of you. But with that, we open the floor to our Q&A session. So I'm going to ask Jasper to come back and, can we get those questions rolling?
Hey, Anna, thank you so much. And thank you, Korina and Xyza. I mean, what wonderful stories. I've had so much fun just sitting, well, fun's the wrong word, but it's so interesting just sitting back and listening to you speak. I mean, Xyza talking about Hong Kong's domestic helpers. I spent half my life in Hong Kong. And it was wonderful I'd love to continue that conversation with you. And Korina, hearing about how you're balancing your work and family life is just fantastic. And twins at 50 that's a cool story. That is a cool story. So we have two questions from the World Wide Web and one from me. Okay, so we'll start with the World Wide Web. We'll start with Sammy, and she has asked, what was the biggest doubt or insecurity you've had to overcome? And I'm going to start that with Xyza.
I think not having a diploma, that's really is my biggest insecurity, because there are doors that I can never open because I don't have that key. That's why I'm doing something about it. Well, it was an insecurity because people made me feel insecure about it. But now I'm like, okay, let's do something about this and fix this problem. So that's it.
That's fantastic. Well, good luck with. We've got another question for you, by the way. But good luck with your course. That's absolutely fantastic. You and I have about the same qualifications at the moment, so that's really cool. And Korina, same question to you. What has been the biggest doubt or insecurity that you've had to overcome?
Well, I'm not sure if I've overcome my insecurity yet. I think my insecurity really, as at my age, when you go to sleep, is that have I done enough? I think that's the biggest question that we shouldn't wait to ask ourselves at our deathbed. By the way, I've interviewed many people in the brink of death, and this is what they ask themselves. So maybe because of that exposure, I kind of tend to look at mortality in the eye very early on. And these days, that's my insecurity. If I've done enough, have I done enough for the poor, for neglected, abused animals? Have I done enough to correct the system in government? Or have I just helped enough people, go through life, education, health issues? So I don't know. It's a mad scramble for me. My husband tells me I think too much and I try to do too much. But then I just don't want that regret on my deathbed. And I'm always striving. I live like it's my last day all the time.
Nice answers. Okay, then the second question, remember those three. Now, the third question is going to be, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old selves if you could meet them again? So you've got a little bit of time to think about that, and I'm going to ask you that one as well, Anna. So, but no, the second question is this is from Emma. Is there something we can all do in our lives to be more aware and help people realize their potential? Let's start with Xyza again. What can we be doing in our lives to be more aware and help people realize their potential?
Read. Because I do think that reading is really important, and be more discerning on what you're consuming, because we now live in a, social media is everywhere. I mean, we use it every day, and there's a lot of misinformation, fake news all around us. But we still need to keep on read books, and we must continue analyzing if what we're reading is actually factual or not. And then I do think that if we open our mind and just keep on learning, where we can find what we're really good at and what can we do for our own communities. Yeah.
Fantastic answer. Korina, same question to you. What can we be doing more to help people realize their potentials?
Well, Facebook has really opened up to everyone for them to discover their potential and to showcase their individuality. So kudos to platforms like Facebook for free platforms like that. And all I can do really is talk and live my best life the way I know how. I put out stuff about myself in social media, not really mainly to be anything else but an inspiration somehow. I refuse to be negative. I've chosen not to be political. I just want to inspire. I just want to show how a best life could be lived in your own home, in your own kitchen, with your own kids, by yourself, and showcase the best that is you, that you were gifted with. There was a time when people told me I couldn't. And that was when I told myself and proved to myself that nobody else can tell you what you can or cannot do. Only you can test those waters and answer the question yourself. It's a very short life, so just go for it and try. Because if you don't, that's when regret sets in.
Fantastic. Okay, final question, and this is from me. And this is a question I love asking all of our speakers for every session we do. If you had the opportunity to meet your 16-year-old self somewhere in the world, what advice would you give them? And I'm going to start with Anna.
You're going to give them some time to think about it.
We gave you a little bit of time, but also you've been sitting there very patiently. So what advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
I think I would tell myself to listen to my inner dialogue and believe in my own value. So I know that's such a beauty queen answer, but as I've gotten older, and the older you get, as Korina pointed out, the more you are confident about who you are and you come into who you are. I've realized that everything really does work out in the end. No matter what happens to your life, and I feel like the trick there is to realize that you've got everything that you need to succeed, or to go places, or to make an impact already within you. And all you have to do is not to listen to all the naysayers who are trying to tell you otherwise. So I think that's what I would tell my 16-year-old self.
Good advice. Good advice. Xyza, you've just bumped into your 16-year-old self, which I don't believe was that long ago. But what advice would you give your younger self?
use more sunscreen, and your father's right. Listen to him more. That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to get my 15-year-old daughter's not that far away from me. I need you to shout that a lot louder. Brilliant, brilliant. What a wonderful answer. And Korina, final word from you. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
In graduation rites earlier this month, so I'm ready with an answer for that one. What I told the students is, well, I had like 5 things, but one of them is that never start cigarettes. It just isn't worth it at 16. That's what I would tell a 16-year-old. I would also say don't waste your time on bad boyfriends or bad girlfriends who tell you off all the time, and it's just a waste of time. I mean, don't get too serious with relationships when you're very, very young. And another would be to always remember your parents. I think parents, how you treat your parents, how you revere them, how you are to them, has a lot to do with your own success as a human being and professionally. And never forget them. And you have to give back to them even before you start on yourself. So there, I would tell myself, does it reveal my regrets in life, Anna?
Well, as an ex-smoker, I can tell you I absolutely agree with the non-smoking thing, and with a 15-year-old daughter, I can absolutely agree with the boyfriend thing. But listen, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna, for helming this fantastic afternoon. And thank you to Xyza. Thank you to Korina. It's been brilliant. Thank you to Facebook again for helping us put this wonderful session together. You can watch this again on our Facebook channel, branded Facebook channel, Facebook page. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with the next Digital Matters produced with our friends at Facebook. So thank you very much for joining us this morning and this afternoon. Thank you.